Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Marcus Aurelius, and this is Dominions 4, The Thrones of Ascension, a fantasy turn-based strategy game by Illwinter Game Design. What I love about this game is that you don't have to deal with the same old fantasy tropes. There's no elves or dwarves or orcs. Instead, you have nations that are based on history and mythology. The story goes that the Pantocrator, basically the god of the world, has disappeared, and now there's a bunch of powerful beings who are fighting each other in mortal combat to try to determine who takes his place. You play one of these pretender gods. Now, I'm new to recording, so please let me know if the volume levels are okay, if you can hear my voice. I'd really appreciate it. The first thing you want to do when you start a new game is pick the map that you're going to be playing on. There's a lot that are included, and you can also get a random map, but I've decided on the map Streamlands by forum member Elmoki. I like this map because it's small enough for a short but exciting game, and it's also wraparound, so that makes it a bit more tactically challenging as you can't just hide up in a corner. You have enemies generally on all sides of you. It says the map is suitable for 5 to 9 players. I guess I'll split the difference and go with 7. The next thing you want to do is pick the age that you're going to be playing in. Each age is a little different, and some nations exist in one age or two, and others exist in all 3. Even the nations, though, that exist in all 3 ages are very different depending on which age you pick. I'm going to pick the early age, because that right now is the only age the nation I want to play is located in. Now I'm going to set up the AI players. Now I don't really mind what nation they are. I like there to be a surprise and some variety, but I want them all to be land nations. This map does support underwater nations, but I've looked at it and I don't think there's enough water to really allow such a nation to shine. I'm also going to increase the difficulty a little bit. Now, as I said, there's a lot of uniqueness in this game. You could play Ermor, which is based on ancient Rome. You could play Cetis. I've also heard it pronounced Seti, which is based on ancient Egypt. And it's populated by lizard men. You could play Yomi, based on Japanese folklore, with Oni demons and flying Tengu. Or you could even play Atlantis, an underwater empire of people who kind of look like the creature from the Black Lagoon. But I'm going to play the first city. Is a new nation to Dominions 4. It's a nation of wild men called Enkidu, who up until recently were uncivilized and communing with nature, but are now taking their first steps towards the long path to civilization that will no doubt one day end with reality television and flush toilets. They're not quite there yet, though. They have, however, built their first city, Eridu. They are strong in nature, earth, water, and air magic, and if you're lucky enough to conquer a swamp province, they also have access to some death magic. They have strong priests, and I won't go into all the reasons why that's a good thing, but I'll leave you with one, which is in order to win the game, you have to conquer and claim thrones of Ascension. Now, these thrones can only be claimed by holy level 3 or above priests. Most nations can't even recruit holy level 3 or above priests. They only have their pretender god and their prophet. But this nation has 2 separate commanders that can be recruited that have holy 3. So we're very strong in that respect. The next thing you want to do is actually create and customize your god. I've found that gods generally fall into 3 different types. There are what are called super combatants, which are gods that are built from the ground up to fight, conquer provinces on their own, and later in the game, with the right weapons and spells, they become really a force to be reckoned with. A Shadu's a good example of that, a lot of hit points, flying, trample. A Ghost King is an even better example. He's ethereal, so he can hardly be hit by regular weapons, and he creates fear when people are fighting him. Another option is a Blessed Pretender. Every nation has sacred troops, which can be blessed by priests, and they earn benefits based on the magical skills of the Pretender. For example, you'll notice as I add fire magic here, the Bless effect increases the attack skill. As you get higher, you get a special ability, in this case, flaming weapons. Water's the same way. As you add up, you get higher defense skill. As you max out, you get quickness. Now, a Blessed Pretender is generally best for a nation that has access to a lot of cheap, easily recruitable, sacred troops. I'm not going to go with that. I'm going to go with the third type of Pretender, a Support Pretender. Now, some nations have very poor magical diversity. They only have spells in a number of different paths, like fire maybe, or earth. And it's a good idea to get a Pretender that diversifies them, that has access to other areas. I'm not going to do that necessarily. Has pretty good diversity, but I'm going to pick a pretender that has the same magic as but is better at it. And the purpose of that is so that my pretender can forge items and cast spells later on that benefit my soldiers and my nation. After looking through them all, I've decided to go with the Anunnaki of Love and War. The Anunnaki is a giant of divine heritage. She was once the warrior and lover of the previous Pantocrator, but was imprisoned for her violent and promiscuous behavior. She has given birth to heroes, gods, and monsters alike. Now with the Pantocrator gone, she is ready to claim a world inhabited by her children. So basically, she is the pissed off, violent ex-wife of God, who was in prison, has broken out, and now wants to take over the world. And we're going to help her do it. Sounds exciting. Now I'm not going to spend too much time on explaining her magic paths. I'll go into that more detail when I'm actually playing, but it's basically just the level I need it to be to allow her to forge items and cast spells that down the line are going to help my national troops and mages. The next thing is Dominion. Dominion's kind of difficult to explain, but it basically represents your divine essence and how it affects the lands under your control. You can have a land of order or a land of turmoil, a land of productivity or a land of sloth, a land of heat or cold, growth or death, fortune or misfortune, magic or drain. So you might be asking yourself, why would you want a bad domain? Why would you want, for example, misfortune? Well, certain nations are better in certain areas, and some nations have strengths that overcome those weaknesses, and by taking negative scales, you also get points that you can use on other things, more magic, or a better scale in another area. I'm, however, going to go with something I've discovered through playing this nation before is generally beneficial. I want high order, which gives me increased income because these guys are expensive. I want a little bit of production because their swords and shields require materials, and production allows you to have more of those. This nation prefers Heat 1. I'm actually going to raise that to Heat 2. It hurts me a little bit, it lowers my supplies, but it hurts regular nations even more because they prefer it to be temperate. And I'm going to give myself a point of growth, which reduces the negative from the supplies. Actually, it completely checks it out, and it also increases my population growth. The more population you have, the more money you make from taxes. I'm also going to give myself a point of luck. Luck is good to have just because you get special events throughout the game which gives you magical gems or money or heroes who want to fight for your cause. So it's good to have. Next is I don't want my dominion to be overpowered by other gods. Just because you own a province and your troops are in it doesn't necessarily mean that province falls under your dominion. Some gods who have stronger dominions can overpower the dominions of weaker gods, and your troops get a bonus of morale for fighting in your own dominion. So I'm going to raise that up to stay competitive. Now you'll notice that I'm at negative 143 design points. I can't afford this god, but that's okay because there's some other choices you can make. Right now the god is set to start awake, meaning she's ready to go from turn 1, but there's other ways you could do it. You could also start your god as dormant, which means she's sleeping and will wake up after about 12 turns or a year. Or you could set your god as imprisoned, which means they are unable to come into the world for about 2 to 3 years. Now reading the flavor text again, it would make sense to make my pretender imprisoned, but I need her to do some site searching and get going pretty early, so I'm actually going to go with dormant. That gives me with 7 remaining design points. Can't do anything with those, so I'm ready to go. All that's left at this point is to name my pretender. Since she's the goddess of the nation of I think I'm just going to be very boring and choose Ursula. It's not the most exciting name, but it gets the point across. All praise Ursula. Well, they all might not right now, but they will. Oh yes, they will. Next we set the game settings. This is the last thing you do before you play. I'm not going to make too many changes, but I'm going to increase the special site frequency from 45 to 50. Special sites are basically magical sites that you find when you search for them, and they generally provide gems, but they could also provide unique things to summon, like creatures and mages. They're fun to have. I like them a lot. I'm also going to enable score graphs. This shows you things like which nation has the most provinces and armies. Some people think it's cheating, but I'm playing this single player, and I think it's just fun to keep an eye on. I'm also going to increase the Hall of Fame entries. Basically, troops who earn experience, have a chance to become heroic and go in the Hall of Fame. If a troop goes in the Hall of Fame, they get a special ability, like increased strength or increased hit points. And it just adds a bit of uniqueness to the game, and I enjoy it, so I'm going to bump that up. There's also Thrones of Ascension. I mentioned that to win the game, you have to claim Thrones of Ascension. Well, this determines how many thrones there are and what types of thrones. The game wants to have 7 level 1 thrones. A level 1 throne is worth 1 point, a level 2 throne is worth 2 points, and a level 3 throne is worth 3 points. The game wants to start me with 7 level 1 thrones. I think that's kind of boring, so I'm actually going to give myself 1 level 3 throne because they're really cool, 2 level 2 thrones, and I'm going to reduce my level 1 thrones to 5. That gives you 3 plus 4, 7 plus 5 is 12 total points. And I'm going to make it so you need 7 points to win. So just over half. So you can get the level 3 throne and the 2 level 2 thrones and you've won. Or you can get all 5 level 1 thrones and any one of these. Now, the higher level a throne is, the more powerful it is, the better perks you get from owning it, but also the stronger the defenders are. So it adds a little bit of variety and fun to the game. I'm also going to change renaming. I like to rename my commanders. It makes it more immersive for me and I could follow them and what they're doing. I just think it's a fun feature. It doesn't affect the gameplay, but makes it more like a story, makes it more interesting. So here we go. We're ready to start the game. However, my 15 minutes is almost up, so I'm going to stop here and return at a later episode. Thanks for watching. Leave comments, and I appreciate it. Have a good one.